Hi, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm seeing lots of folks already joining on the YouTube side. There has been recently a bit of technical difficulty with Facebook streaming into groups. So hopefully I did get word that that was repaired by Facebook, and hopefully today we'll be able to have viewers joining from directly within our Facebook AutoCrit author community. Welcome, everybody. Hi, Florida, Tampa. Oh, few people from Florida. Oh, we have a big following in Florida, Gareth. Canada. Oh, England, Italy. Hi, Lillian. It's good to see you from Italy. Thanks for joining. All right. Welcome, everyone. We'll give a few moments for the internet pipes to warm up and for people to join from YouTube or from Facebook group. Hopefully that is working. Oh, yep, I see at least one person from the Facebook group, so they're coming on in. Great, great news. So welcome. Who is excited to learn about the What's the Score this month? Debbie Macomber, and I love the fact that we are doing from Debbie Macomber a Christmas message, because I don't know about where everyone else is living, but here in North Georgia, it's almost summer, which means in just a few weeks it's going to be quite warm, and I'll be longing for the days of Christmas and cooler weather and cozy fires. So why not inspire that now? It's time to start writing your Christmas romance stories, authors out there. It is time to write those so you can release them around Christmas time. So we're going to dissect a Christmas message from Debbie Macomber. Now, of course, I have here with me today Gareth from AutoCrit. Say hi.
Hello. Hello, hello. I'm in journey mode today.
Journey mode. I love Explorer Auto. You know what? I'm just going to make that a little bit larger so people can see. Now, tell me about Explorer Auto. What's that? Is he from our new camps?
Funny enough, yes. Explorer Auto is currently getting kitted up and doing his practice runs because I don't know if anybody out there has noticed it, but we are now launching a whole bunch of summer camps for kids, which will be online writing camps, some of them taking multiple weeks, some of them are just a week long, whatever your kids are into, and you can keep them interested in with we know how kids are, but the whole idea is during the summer for parents, let us kind of take them out of your hair for a while, and into doing something creative and fun and just really fire them up and get them doing something. And I believe the Destination Imagination class actually in the end comes with a printed anthology. So all of the students that are in the class there for that camp will get a physical book in their hands, so your child can have their story printed. And we all know just how inspirational that kind of thing could be for young people to really get into it. So if you are interested in looking at those for your own kids, pop onto the website, and under the heading of events and courses, we now have a link to kids camps for summer.
That's fantastic. I will endeavor to make a quick banner for our broadcast today. But speaking of printed anthologies, I love that one of our kid camps features that. It is also, because you said it can be very motivating for young people or kids. And by young people, you mean me, because I love to see my things in print. And
everybody. Let's just say everybody.
Who doesn't love that?
There's something special about it as a youngster. I mean, even if it was, I'm probably going to date myself here, but back in the day of dot matrix printing, where you would print, your little short stories off and rip the edges off the page and present that to your parents. So I wrote a story and it's in my hands and it's physical. Well, we're going to go a step beyond that, and it's a proper book.
Oh, that's so wonderful. The other thing it made me think of is, speaking of printed anthologies, we have our second annual community writing challenge starting up May 10th. And that also gives adults or kids, I guess there's no age limit for that challenge, free to sign up, but also one of the amazing prizes you can win during that writing challenge is your short story as part of our printed trophy anthology. We did it last year for the first time, and it was magnificent. I don't have a copy here at my fingertips, but I usually do, like Vanna White, showing you kind of the prizes. But imagine, if you will, a professionally designed, fully edited anthology of short stories written by members of our AutoCrit community, starting on May 10th through the 24th, coming up this year. Take your story from idea to polished perfection. Submit it to us if you choose. Submission is optional, but submit it to us if you'd like. A chance to be in that printed anthology. It is an annual thing for us, and we're just so thrilled to bring it back for year 2. If you'd like more information for that, we'll make sure we post that link up. So not just kids camps get excited about having their work in print. Also, Bob has a great comment in our YouTube chat. Can we read the previous winners somewhere? So the anthology that's created as part of our community writing challenge is purely a trophy. It is such a limited run. It is only available to the authors who are featured in that anthology, and there are 10 of them, or to AutoCrit staff, of course. I mean, I get a little pass, right? So because I ordered them, so I have a copy. But the previous winners are often also available through their own direct writing. So what we can do, Gareth, maybe we do this, is provide a list of previous anthology winners, and folks can have a look, have a quick Google to find other works by our anthology winner. I know I don't want to name any names and put anybody on the spot right now. I will later, I'm certain. But I know several of our authors from last year have other published works that are available. So yeah, good stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah, I saw before we went live there. I know we have at least one of last year's winners with us right now.
Oh, I see her.
Anybody out? But
I see her.
I know we do. But yeah, Bob, it would be up to the authors. Really, the point of it being a little trophy thing is kind of only printed for those people. Is again, we make no claims to copyright. There's nothing, and we don't want to. If anybody were to go on to submit their stories for traditional publishing and anywhere else, even in just like periodicals or magazines, we don't want there to be any room for them to say this is a reprint, because it isn't. It's literally in the hands of 10 people worldwide. Yes. So yeah, that's the way that works.
11.
11 people.
Yeah. we don't AutoCrit employees don't count, and I get that. But I mean, I have to have a prop, right? So I need an extra copy so I can show everybody.
Yeah, well, I think it's the same thing. You know, we're all kids at heart. So just like with kids comes, it's this is mine. I did this.
This is mine. I made this. Oh, it's so energizing. But okay, I love this. It's not why we're here today. Without further ado, let's see what's the score live. And I love that Gareth is here doing this for us today, because those of you who have been to our shows before or who have taken some of our genre writing courses may be familiar with Gareth. He's our resident horror expert. So I'm so intrigued to, Gareth, get your reactions to a Christmas romance novel that you have dissected through our AutoCrit microscope. I'm just going to pull that screen in because I know you found some really interesting things with this. So let's dive right in.
Yes, I will say again, no spoilers immediately, but yep, there's some fun stuff to be found here. Again, I'm not a romance person, so I can't speak to a lot of the content of it, but certainly interesting things to see in the results. As we generally always do, I meant to say for the beginning, since this is a Christmas message I'm not quite sure the surname, Debbie Macomber. Mm-hmm. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce it.
I call it Macomber, so...
But I laughed at Jocelyn's email sent out about this with, it may not be winter, but does a Christmas message leave us cold? And
come on.
I can say as we go through this, not really. And it's going to be surprising. So, as I like to do in these streams, Beth, feel free to take a guess, and I'll let others take a guess based on what you can see there in the fingerprint. What our score might be to begin with. And remember, this is the general fiction comparison score, so just compared to just about everything out there.
Okay. So tell me, how many words are in this story? Do you remember?
Roughly 90K.
Oh, wow. Okay. A nice length work. Okay. And we're comparing to general fiction. Anybody has guesses, post those in the comments. I'm going to go ahead and throw my guess out. 78. Okay.
Ooh.
Okay. Okay.
You were very close.
Very
76.
Close.
Well,
right.
if we round up 77.
I like it.
Just before we go further into the rest of the reports, something that I've tended to skip over in the past that I keep forgetting not to do is, before we jump into the rest, checking some of those stats, because you said about the word count. We're roughly around 90K. But the interesting thing that I do like to look at that I just forget all the time is the sentence and paragraph analysis. For example, average words per sentence, only 8. So it's one of these things when we talk about readability, obviously, is keeping short sentences. And the longer a sentence gets, the harder it becomes to parse, and the more readers are likely to kind of mentally fall out of the flow. So it's usually we'll see somewhere up to around 12 is going to be the average per sentence. So 8 seems a little on the low side for that. But again, that's not a negative mark or anything. That's just saying, if you think your sentences might be too brief at that sort of length, not necessarily. But again, it is an average. And when it gets to paragraphs, we're about 22.
Okay. And, I recently did a demonstration of AutoCrit using the first 4 chapters of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. So behind the scenes here, backstage here, I'm just going to try to pull that up really quickly, because the huge changes that I was seeing in comparing something written in 1818 versus something in the more modern tone, this is a great example of that, right? The average words per sentence at 8 is even lower than what we typically see, around the 10, 12 mark. But I feel like for Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, it was extraordinarily long. Same for things like paragraph length and sentence. It was just really interesting to see how the previous, 100-year-old works stack up against, 200-year-old works.
I think a lot of it has definitely been
a
development over time. A lot of the more classic literary stuff,
an evolution,
will tend to have much longer sentences, much more dense writing.
Absolutely.
But if we jump across then into our first report, so we're at 76.61. We'll start
I like how you did that flare at the end of point 1. That was excellent.
We'll start with dialogue tags, as we like to do.
Yes.
What are we dealing with
bigger for us
in terms of dialogue? Roughly, almost 50-50 split between using said and asked. As we always say, those are usually going to be the first 2 that you should ever go for, but a lot of others here as well.
This is what I want to see. The 50-50 split of the said and asked to others is surprising, because but look at all of the others, and for me this is very telltale of a romance. The whispered and the murmured and the muttered and the
it is something you'll tend to find more in romance, of course. The style of writing there. I was actually surprised on the first glance through that I didn't see more side, which is what you would normally see a lot of the time in romance. I can't remember in the past. We've seen some pretty crazy ones show up in some romance novels.
It's always an interesting bit.
Yeah, this is not too unusual. We can see said and asked are detected as overused. So again, they're being used more in this length of this novel than you would see in your general piece of fiction. And that may simply be that there's more times that a tag like said has been used when the author could just forego using tags. It's not necessarily all the time, but with 103 to remove, and with asked 135, there's more than likely some scope there to go through and, just take out some of these tags completely if you like. In our alternatives, we have whispered, murmured,
Mm.
added, muttered, explained, agreed. Cried, paused, assured. Paused is more than likely going to be a false positive there, I think.
Mm.
Shouted. Too.
Lovers,
it's
lovers
interesting
quarrel.
to see. I think the greatest thing I could see here, because some of these things, like the likes of murmured, it's just time with coffee, go through and check. Although there's other things that I could say about it. I won't run the report right now, but of course, these numbers would change if we changed our comparison to romance rather than general fiction. Because as we said just a minute ago, romance is a genre where alternative tags tend to happen a lot more than you would see elsewhere. That's just kind of how it is. And if you've grown up reading romance and you're used to that, then you'll naturally take that with you into your own romantic writing, and that just kind of builds the general tropes and the construction of the genre. The reason I won't run that right now and show is because we'll get to that towards the end.
We do that at the end, and that's one of my favorite parts.
And that's where we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's where we stand for dialogue tags, and again, right next to that, we have adverbs in dialogue. We'll see what's going on here. And we have 10% of all dialogue has an adverb attached to it. 10% feels possibly a little high, but I think that's just because we've been dealing with a lot of thrillers recently. They tend to be very, very lean in this kind of thing. But the most used one is going to be finally, which is not overused in the context of everything. We have hopefully, excitedly, stiffly, pointedly, warmly, and moving down a few there. The initial one that really stood out to me when I went through it, I went, what was saucily?
That's fantastic.
And it's just the one whispered saucily.
So when we talk a little bit about like the purple prose and the overwriting and the blah, this puts me in that mindset of it's a little bit over the top. Saucily is a little bit.
You see, it can feel that way. I certainly see it and go, that's not a word I would kind of consider using. But again, I do not write nor edit nor really get involved in romance. So
I was going to say, like, the Debbie Macomber brand is strong, and it Christmas romance, a lighthearted, it's very on brand for her.
Very much so, yeah. It could be, and again, yeah, I think the Christmas romance side of it as well does add a little bit of an extra angle to the overall tone, as you said. It generally may be more playful.
I feel it is
because it's just you're reading it at a time of year where you're looking to feel.
It is so
happy.
lighthearted. It's happy. It's lighthearted. It's a little, sometimes can feel a little formulaic, and I'm thinking, of course, around our Hallmark movies, etc. But it is intended to evoke that feeling of hope and inspiration and cheerful and love. And there's just not a lot that's too heavy. For a holiday romance, there's 9 times out of 10, nothing bad's going to happen ever. And there's definitely going to be a happy ending, right? That's part of the I don't want to say trope, but that's part of the brand of the genre, right? It's going to be a happy ending. If you don't have a happy ending, it's not a romance, really, of any brand.
Part of the experience.
Yeah.
But as we look through the sort of all our adverbs that we have going on here, you'll notice that for Debbie, there's not a whole lot of quote unquote fixing to be done if we're going from a general fiction standpoint. So it's still a really good result from what I can see. We'll move from adverbs in dialogue just straight over to adverbs. Why not? And one thing I wanted to point out is oh no, Beth, there's a prologue.
A prologue, no.
Prologue works in this though. It's in the form of a letter, which works.
Okay,
works for me.
That I will allow. That does work for me as well. I am firmly camp no prologue, because it tends to be kind of a lot of exposition, info dump. Not really. If it's important enough to the story, make it chapter 1. But I like this idea of a letter for. I am waiting for the comments to start rolling in. Like, no, prologues are the best. So I don't mean to stir up trouble on the internet. Yeah.
To add to the suspense of it too, I will say that there's something coming up that shows kind of what's going on with the prologue and why it is a prologue and why I think that was probably a good choice in this regard, which is not something that I'll often say for prologues. But anyway, as we're here in adverbs, our overall reading, we're up in the good area. Great result for Debbie, even though we do have, a lot of adverbs that are showing as overused here that we could potentially be trimming. The overall result is still good. So again, you see this in your own work and you open it up and it's like, oh no, look at all this red. Check out your overall. Of course, you still have to dig in and see what you may or may not want to remove. But if your overall goal target is pretty good, well, feel a little bit better about yourself there. That's what it's all about.
It can be a little jarring to see a lot of red. So for me, I do in these results, I would untick the show. What is it? Show overused and show all. I would show none for a minute. I would just give myself a quick little break and do the show none and then go by word, just tick through that list and make sure that your use is intentional and thoughtful and purposeful. And I see for me, this is kind of like, oh boy, I have a lot of work to do.
Yes, I will just keep scrolling.
So you can break it down and do it one by one, and it's going to be, for me, a bit more motivating, a little bit more, a little bit less overwhelming. So, pro tip.
Yeah, there's a lot of different, adverbs on show here. As we get towards the bottom of the list here, it's pretty much twos with remove about one, so there's just one word to go. There's, of course, everybody has their own preferences. Words like quizzically, I do not like quizzically at all, really, as a word. So that's something I would look at straight away, but I am not.
You know
Debbie,
what? The word quizzically every time makes me think of, the puppies that make that cock to the side of their head and their ears do the thing. And specifically, I think, Gareth, sometimes of your dog doing that, just making that little face and it being quizzical. So for me, it evokes a very specific response. And I'm with you. Quizzically is an unusual word to use.
But up top here, we're leading the way with really about 103. And it really is, it does tend to be one of those adverbs. It's also kind of filler. If it's in your writing, you'll get away with most adverbs if they're in dialogue, again, because people will speak with adverbs. We say it all the time. We say it all the time, and people say them all the time. We talk with a lot of adverbs, and really is one that will come in, but you don't want it showing up too often in your actual prose, I don't think, unless you want your narrator to sign that way, which they're just like, well, it was really this and it was really that. It sounds like kind of, threadbare storytelling, because it is more of a filler and quite a generic word. It was really, really big. There's better words, unless you're intending to make your narrator sound, I guess it could be a younger person, not able to pull out a wider range of language to describe something that's really, really big. But if that's not your intention, well then, watch out for the realies. We have about 49 removals here versus 103. Although on the same token, apparently 40 uses or remove about 33. That would leave 7 total. So that's something that again would get caught. And these are showing up a lot in the narration here rather than in dialogue. So of course dialogue you can get through fine. This is something I will also point out structurally when we get to the showing versus telling, or I think it is showing versus telling coming up, or generic descriptions. But for example here, apparently the bookseller was a personal friend of his. This is perfectly fine. I'll get into it more in a moment. But really, if you're reading this is kind of backstory of the character and what's going on. And when we have the word apparently the bookseller was a personal friend of his, it tells us that the character kind of knows or believes that this is the case, but isn't entirely sure. So, that word, just using apparently there, tells us a lot about her relationship with this other person and how much information she actually knows. So we do get information there without having to go through 2 scenes of them chatting to figure out what their relationship is like. Again, so whenever you get these recommendations, it's don't be too afraid of them. It's figure out if you did that intentionally. If you did, perfect, just skip over it. Unnecessary filler words. Usually everybody's top one.
Oh, wow.
we're hitting way in the excess here.
Wow.
Funnily enough, we have a huge amount of that. Then seemed, really, that's, and seemed. That, however, which surprised me, 945 uses of that, removed by 5.
Oh, wow.
Which is crazy. Normally don't see that low for such a high number of them. However, if we do combine that with the other form of that's, then we have 60. It becomes the highest total. So that saved me from existential crisis there when I realized that was, for a moment, that was not the highest filler word. Because it really is when you incorporate that's. Same thing as before with a lot of filler is, and here's really coming up again. So we have really is definitely a filler word. Much the same, you don't want to use it too much outside of dialogue, but people will talk in filler all the time. Often without filler, dialogue seems stunted. It doesn't feel real. So you may need to get a lot in there. But of course, the AutoCrit system, it'll see that, it'll compare to other books, and it'll say you're overusing it a bit. But if you're really a lot more high on the dialogue scale in terms of how much dialogue you have compared to other books of the same length, well, then you're naturally going to have a bit more showing up. But that's really just what it's there to do, is help you get the correct perspective, because the decision is yours to make. If you're looking in the actual narrative prose, maybe not the best spot to look at here, because this is from the perspective, this is the letter, this is the opening, that's a written letter. We have multiple that's here. Really little block here that could be looked at, and I did look at it, but however, wrote that one for me. Okay, that's not going to work without that word. And the popularity of that particular letter, again, it's calling attention to pointing out that particular letter that's necessary. That she's managed to start a little business on the side. We need that to tie that sentence together. However, as we get to the last one, she offered to write mine, of course, but I know that between, it kind of works in the voice, if that's the voice you're trying to set, but the sentence would also work if it just said, but I know between our work doing medical transcriptions, it's not entirely necessary to parse that sentence. But if it's your decision as the author, you're like, I want that word in there because I want that to be the cadence of this character's voice, well, then do so. There's nothing stopping you doing that. And with the amount of that or that's, I'm sure we could spend a good chunk of the day jumping through everything and finding them all. And a lot of the time, so it was because of Dr. Jeffries that she'd been banned from a local bookstore. It's because of Dr. Jeffries she'd been banned from a local bookstore. Usually those kind of things can go. But again, it's all down to the cadence. What is it you're going for?
The way you read that out loud brings to mind a tip that I like to use, which is using that the text-to-speech reader, right? If you have a filler word in there and you're questioning whether it can go or whether it can stay, sometimes reading it out loud yourself can help, just as Gareth did. But sometimes for me, I need to hear it in a different voice. So highlight that, use that voice reader if you're an AutoCrit professional subscriber, and hear it in a different way to help you make that decision.
Yeah, good tip. And related to what I said there as well, was showing versus telling. So if we get into this, again, we're finding ourselves quite high up in the excess. Showing versus telling is a tough one, though. And for a lot of people will be up in the excess just by the nature of the indicators. They're common words, but as we all know, or most of us will, viewing as well, the indicators are the words we find that are most closely tied to a section that is telling rather than showing what's going on. And these are kind of usually experiential kind of words like felt and knew and saw. It's tying into sensory input. And the problem is that it's just telling us things.
And not
rather than having the characters act and react and show us things like that. For example, oh dear, Ko felt guilty about the scene she'd caused that morning. We're just told there that how the character's feeling. There's no real just showing it to us by the way they speak, by the way they react, by the way it's going on. It's we're just straight up told they're feeling guilty, how they're feeling. The same thing happens with a lot of things like new. Well, I see new and no here, but again, these are in dialogue. So the characters telling us things there in the dialogue. That's usually quite fine. But if we're jumping into their head at times, she knew he was practicing child psychologist. The thing is with a lot of showing versus telling is you'll hear people say all the time, don't tell, always show, and that's not necessary. Like I said with the felt, she did feel guilty for having embarrassed him and in the process herself. Again, we are just told there how the character is feeling. But if we're just trying to get that little bit of information in so we can move the story on to more important places, however, how the character feels is relevant to what's going to happen, but isn't relevant to any major thing right now, but it is an underpinning of what's to come. Well, it's absolutely fine just to drop something like that in. So as you're going through and editing, and if you see any of these indicators for yourself, this beginning of chapter 4, if nothing else, KO felt this dinner would afford her the opportunity to learn about Win. We're being told by character motivations here. We don't need half that scene kind of being dialogue and back and forth and everything that's slowly unveiling to us that she wants to learn more about him throughout this. It's like, just give us the motivation and set it loose in the scene. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that, as long as the storytelling itself overall doesn't become too threadbare. That's all.
So tell me a little, I just saw a note from Bob come through the chat. Why do it and its show up in, I think it was in just the report that we went away from just now.
Again, because they are detected in research. You'll find basically all the versions, like is there as well. Detected in research as being found to be one of these markers that show up a lot in sections that are almost strictly telling. There's a pretty handy little article on our blog about it. I think if you search for the word "it" on the blog, it'll bring down a few examples in there. But in the simplest explanation, if I can try to put it in the right order in my mind, is that it tends to show up when an author is directly saying, like, it wasn't the fact that they had done this, it was the fact they had done this other thing. Again, that's just telling us information about a character, or that's probably the cleanest kind of way to put it, is where it wasn't. It's giving us character motivation, giving us their thoughts and everything at times, and that's going to be telling, not showing, because it's not unfolding the motivation. It's not unfolding what it is they're upset about. Let's just say we're just being told they were upset about this. It was the reason they were upset. Let's say it like that. So that tends to be why it's seen as one of the indicators. But again, it's very contextual in your own writing, so we can highlight it for you and help you kind of see if it's there and parse it. But don't fall into the trap of thinking that, like, just because it's red, I now have to create 3 scenes to show this instead of telling it. It's like, is it better just to tell it and move on? The thing that you really want to think about is, am I telling it because it's irrelevant? And therefore won't be needed again? I'm just putting it in there because I think it adds some spice. If that's the case, well then maybe it shouldn't be there at all. Next to nothing should be there if it's irrelevant. But if it does form something of an underpinning or a motivation for what's to happen, then by all means tell it. We don't need, as I said, that sort of 3 pages of dialogue just to try to show it to the best of your ability. If that's just slowing things down unnecessarily. Hopefully that makes sense.
Absolutely does. And by the way, we had a quick question in the chat. Oops, wrong button. Pardon me. I'm just going to pull up really quickly an easy way for you to see our blog, autocrit.com/blog. You can search for the word IT, and there will be a few results. So bear with it and just scroll down a little bit. There's an article in there called Why It Matters in Your Book that is fantastic alignment to what Gareth is talking about right now. But you can check out our entire blog series at autocrit.com/blog. I put the link to the direct article in the chat for YouTube, but I'm not exactly sure how that will show up for those who are watching our replay. I'm happy to post this as well, but it isn't as catchy. autocrit.com/blog/y-it. So head over to the blog and search for the word it. Yep, it's a very long URL. So check out the blog at autocrit.com/blog. Back to you, Gareth.
While you're there, poke around everything else as well.
So many things.
There's plenty to go through. Moving on, the reports jumped into initial pronoun and names because I know people like to just see the percentages here. Again, this is just to compare against your own as you write. 47.72, which is quite higher on the skill. Usually we, if you've seen these shows before or looked at there's a lot of these written on the blog as well. So just shout out to the blog yet again. There are other books on there in written form with screenshots and everything for you. We don't tend to see them go too high above 50%. Usually somewhere between 35, 30 to 35 up to 50. And 47.72, again, does not break that rule.
So I do have an
these
easier
are the number
link
of sentences.
for...
Did you make a
pretty
link?
I have already a better link for what's the score in our archives on our blog. So autocrit.com/WTS for what's the score. And that'll just pull together all of our previous what's the score blog post entries where you can inspect what we've previously inspected through this series.
Indeed, check them out. Some of them we have done live videos and streams for, and some are blog exclusive. So if you've seen some streams, be sure to check out the blog because some are only in print.
Yes.
Moving on from initial pronouns and names, again, just a comparison thing for your own work. Sentence starters, which would be starting a sentence with a conjunction or an action verb. 6.96%. I'm sure at some point in the future we will eventually get comparative with these, so you can actually compare those ones directly with your genre or whatever it is you're writing to see if you're in the expected ballpark, I suppose. Getting to generic descriptions. This one I just like to look to. As I was mentioning, the word really, but we're not in too bad a spot here at all. A little above average for general fiction, and we're looking at the words good, big, special, large, nice, serious, and clever. And again, I think it's pretty evident, right off the bat as soon as you look at these, why these are considered generic descriptions. Good, big, special, large, nice. They are just generic descriptors. But it doesn't mean, again, that every single one of them is evil. When we're looking at what's happening here, we got clever, 6 removed by 4. Clever would be one I probably wouldn't look at too much. I would probably start with big because we got 50 count and only need to remove about 3. So we go, this year's big news. That's almost an idiom at this point. So I would just go with that. The big cat purred with pleasure. I guess if you're saying do we know by that point that the cat's big? I guess does it matter? It's one of these cozy descriptions, though, really, isn't it? That again ties into the whole maybe not get to get too clinical about these things. Is that using that it feels homely. It feels like a Christmas. I'm relaxing with a Christmas romance.
It's definitely a different vibe if it's a big fluffy chonk cat that you're snuggling with versus versus just chonker versus just a cat. It's really evoking that feeling of big fluffy cuddly chonk guy. So I like it. I like that use, actually.
And when we get to other parts, like again dialogue, people will talk like this. My sister is a very big fan of yours. You could, of course, if you wanted to take that out and make it more specific, as my sister is a huge fan of yours. That's the kind of thing you'd be doing with generic descriptions. It's just try to find where, because they often end up, when you get to things like really big, is gigantic, just make it one word. Start cutting down on the length of your sentences and things that way.
Efficiency.
And if something's large. So overall, ultimately, it's not a bad result at all. for Debbie. Like, I mean, 126 uses of good, but it's only removed by 36. And again, this may change if you were comparing onto the romance genre, because conventions there are going to be a little different. And this is what I wanted to show you about our prologue, Beth.
Oh, I'm here for it. Let's see.
So when we get to pacing, starting with this right in your face, you're probably going to be quite shocked at what happens when we check out the summary.
Wow.
Throughout the entire book.
Seriously, that is practically zero.
Of about 90,000 words, 0.86%.
Wow. That is so surprising.
Keeps up the pace, and quite a remarkable chart here as well, where if you're looking at our charts here, our slow-paced paragraphs are the red. So when you see the red going down, that's marking for you that you might want to look at this spot because we're slowing down here. And the blue that you see here is literally the paragraph number of words in your paragraphs, helping you gauge that to make sure that you're keeping a variety. You know, you always want to see it going up and down and up and down and up and down. If everything here was flat, well, then every paragraph in your book is the same length. Everything has the same kind of cadence. You're going to send people to sleep. It's not a good reading experience. However, it was just remarkable to see this almost the entire third act.
Look at that finish. Look at that.
Not one drop. However, in the very beginning, we start nice and slow.
But it's a bit of a, I don't want to say slow burn because I feel like that's such a horror specific thing. But it's a slow build up. Can you would you zoom in to the very beginning for me? Let's have a closer look at what's happening there. Okay.
So it is, even though you see it on the full zoom, when you get right in there, it's not actually a huge number. It's little dips here and there. And again, it's a factor of the length of the book. But you could see that straight away. And this is, again, 100%, I would say, just perfect. I would not look at this and go, that's slow, therefore I have to fix it. Is not the correct sort of mindset to come into it with, because this is obviously going to start slower and warmer. This is a prologue, which is, dear family and friends, Merry Christmas, everyone. This is a very friendly family letter from somebody else. So it's going to warm up a little. It's going to be a bit slower. And obviously not the whole thing, but once we jump into the story, well, then our slow parts start to be a lot more spaced out.
Lots of nice dialogue in there to move the story along. So it feels like that chapter 1, as we always talk about, hooking and starting off quickly and etc. Still accomplishing that here in Debbie Macomber's novel, despite the couple of first indicators with this dreaded prologue. No, it works. It works in this case, and I do appreciate that. But this is exactly why I always like to zoom in on that view summary for pacing. Zoom in on the areas that may look troublesome when you're viewing that summary report, like Gareth did for us a moment ago, because you can really get more details and focus your energies on, or at least make yourself feel better about where you may have slow pacing versus unintentional slow pacing.
Yes, well, I mean, a big part of the whole deal here with AutoCrit and using it is try to build in as much as possible to make you feel good about yourself, because motivation is a big part of the mammoth task of editing, and trying to help put that into context for you. It's like, okay, we got to point these things out because you might want to fix them, but overall, it's not as bad as you think it is. And also remember in the pacing that the pacing reports that this highlighted stuff is entirely contextual. It's built within the context of what you have written. So this part may be slower than what the other stuff that you have. Is this a part where you intend to slow down? And if the answer to that is yes, well then thank you for showing me that, AutoCrit, but I will move on to the next part, because that's exactly what I wanted to do. On the other hand, if it wasn't, and you say, oh yeah, that did slow down too much, I'll pep that up a bit by giving a couple of extra paragraph breaks. Maybe a little bit of dialogue would help to push that along.
I love a dialogue answer there.
The answer is usually some kind of dialogue.
The answer is almost always dialogue.
Pop it on. or just shorten things down and get the words flowing a bit faster. But again, it's completely contextual. So don't be bullied.
Don't let the software bully you.
And when we get towards the back end here, power words.
Oh, yeah. Oh, can I guess? Encouragement. Little bit of fear, a little bit of lust. Oh, look at all that greed.
Surprisingly, the greed was interesting because, yes, usually for a romance, we're going to have a lot of encouragement. We're going to have a decent amount of lust, and there's going to be fear in there because of the whole will they, won't they core aspect of a lot of romance stories is always that love. I'm going to lose the love, or you do lose the love, but it comes back again. But greed is a strange one to see in there. I think they may factor into just the plot of the story itself. Will probably have something to do with that.
Oh, that's a quite interesting power words pie chart. Oh, can we see a little bit more about what's happening in greed in this manuscript?
Potentially.
That's a lot of fear. Oh, look at all those. Oh, look what it is.
Aha, there's a lot of talk of money. I'm assuming the bargain, massive cash, free. I assume
gift. Look at gift. Here. I mean, that's for a holiday romance. They're definitely going to be talking about gifts for sure.
It may be that the characters in this story are running a store of some kind. Maybe what's going on there. Or they're going bargain hunting at some point. So yeah, there's our...
oh, what a lovely result that was. Yeah.
And hitting up the readability statistics, we always like to say, kind of shoot for that 80 point, 79. So perfect. This will tie in with the low, pointed out in the beginning, the average 8 words per sentence. I think it was 22 per paragraph. Again, keeping it snappy and concise and easy to read seems to be something that Debbie is very much adept at, and it comes out right on that 79, which makes it, I think it's purely conversational English, very, very easy to read.
It's right in that sweet spot. Absolutely is. Now, you mentioned the average words per paragraph and per sentence. At the start of our show, I said I just did that demonstration with first 4 chapters of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Debbie Macomber's current novel here that we're looking at, A Christmas Message, average words per sentence, 8. Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, just the first 4 chapters, fine. Written in 1818, average words per sentence. Anybody have a guess? No fair if you've actually attended one of our sessions where we've done this. Let me just go ahead and spoil it. 20 words per sentence and 139 average words per paragraph in Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, compared to the much more pacey, shorter sentence, shorter words per paragraph that we're seeing in modern novels. And Debbie Macomber's A Christmas Message, an excellent example of that. Also, by the way, percent of slow-paced paragraphs in the first 4 chapters of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Gareth, do you want to hazard a guess?
I would not.
I decline your offer to hazard a guess. So remember here in Debbie's novel, because we're on a first name basis, I'll just call her Debbie. In Debbie Macomber's novel, A Christmas Message, percent of slow-paced paragraphs, less than 1%. Back in the day, 200 years ago, 74.24% slow-paced paragraphs in the first 4 chapters of Frankenstein. So you can just see over the decades, years, centuries, the standards have changed. They've shifted so much. So that's the beauty of what AutoCrit is bringing to you, is that ability to see, like, how am I stacking up in terms of even adverb use and dialogue tags. The world has shifted from a reader preference perspective, and I just find this kind of stuff pretty darn interesting.
No, yeah, to play devil's advocate on that one as well. Obviously, as you got to get into the add more data, more words, get into the full length of Frankenstein, obviously that number will change. It's not going to be 70 odd percent of Frankenstein as a whole novelist, though, but it's going to be in the end significantly higher than less than 1%.
Oh my goodness!
That we see today.
Yes, right. Fantastic.
And if we get to our final call...
Oops, here we go. Oh, no. Okay.
This was so good. I decided to do a couple of things. So first of all, we've moved from comparing to general fiction into comparing to romance. Because we've seen a few things in the language that made it quite obvious that this is a romance novel. And I will tell you, yes, the score did change. Where do we think it went?
Okay, it started in the beginning of our show today. We compared to general fiction, and we came out as a 76.61. Now we're comparing to romance. I am going to go 84. 83. Final answer.
Would you like to phone a friend?
No. Are you trying to gently tell me that I'm very wrong? Well, no, not
too far off at all.
Not a terrible guess.
That's 81.65.
Vicky nailed it. Look, 82 is Vicky's guess from the chat. Bob right there with me on the 84 level. So yeah.
It's quite a jump from 76.
Mm-hmm. That's massive.
Up into 81. And I thought, you know what, why not? Since this month, again, for all you romance fans, you'll be happy to know Debbie is a new addition into the comparison options. So when you click on compare your text to, again, if you're an AutoCrit Pro member, we now have in between all of our other authors is Debbie right there.
Yay!
And comparing this book to Debbie and her body of work.
Oh, no. Okay.
What do we think?
Oh, gosh. Well, this is a Christmas romance, and not all of her work is holiday themed. So I'm going to go... Can I pull the Gareth trick and be like, no, I don't want to guess?
Yeah, I'll allow it. Don't worry.
Okay. I'm overthinking it, so I'm going to just pass and let's...
Okay, Beth abstains. And the answer is...
yes.
83.37. So we get another bump up there. And it takes us, in terms of the comparison, a good 7.
Wow, that's big.
Which is a nice jump.
That is a nice jump.
We still haven't smashed through the 90s like Jerry Jenkins, but it looks like we'll get there sometime.
Oh, so close. Debbie Macomber, if you're watching this show. We want to see a new work from Debbie Macomber that run through AutoCrit will give us 90 or above when compared to the rest of the body of Debbie Macomber work.
Yeah, I see, Bob. Good guess, Bob. 88%.
Good guess,
it's
Bob,
like,
yes.
Whenever I was testing it, running it through, I really felt that. I was like, come on, this could do it.
I was right on the 86. I was on the 86 track but I abstained. So yeah, 88. Oh, Jerry Jenkins.
I believe the Jerry Jenkins is... I don't think we have a video for him, but on the blog, Dead Sea Rising was the novel. And I fear we may have lost Beth. Give me a shout in the comments if we have indeed lost Beth. So the strange thing is I'm not even on camera, so I can't just like dance or something. Aha, okay, I'm still here. I was just popping over to YouTube itself just to see if the whole stream had gone or if we had just lost Beth. But I can see...
It was me. I'm back. Thanks for all your concern. Sorry, we're having some quite violent storms here in my area of the U.S. So unceremoniously booted right out of the live stream, lost everything. But I'm back now. What'd I miss?
Everything exciting.
All the good things. Okay, well, that's fair. I did say before we got started to Gareth backstage, I said, if you lose me in this live stream, you're in charge. And so he's done a tremendous job. Thank you, Gareth.
Well, I think we've reached about the end there, unless we have any questions. But otherwise, I hope it's been enjoyable.
So much fun. This was a really interesting one. Bye. All right. We have some calls for Gareth next time you're in charge. Gareth dancing has been specifically requested.
Yeah, you missed it.
That.
You missed
it. Is that what I missed? Oh, shoot. And Denise, thank you. ZennyOptical.com. I love fun glasses. It makes live streaming a little more interesting. So, yeah. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us as we take a closer look at A Christmas Message by Debbie Macomber, a lovely Christmas romance. Now is the time, I think, for authors who are interested in writing a cozy Christmas romance. Have a go at it. Now's the time. You can have your work completed, polished, and ready to release at the holiday season if you want to give that a try. So
I think that's very true. And if you are, use Debbie as your
comparison.
From the looks of it, you should end up with a good result.
Sounds terrific. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you again soon. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.